So we learned that it is important to maintain genetic diversity, right? For example, for a species of, let's say, rice plant, we cannot afford to lose all the genetic diversity when we do the selective breeding, correct? Remember? When we do selective breeding, we only choose rice plants that have got high yield, okay, that is disease and pest resistance. So as we do the selection, whichever allele that we did not select might be lost from the entire species, isn't it? And then we realize that if we lost those alleles, then in the future, when the environmental condition changes, that means when the selection pressure changes, that means when the abiotic and biotic factor changes, like new diseases, okay, climate change, temperature becomes higher and higher, and then no more rainfall, say for example, will there be any rice plant with an allele that is favorable for them to survive in the new type environment or not? So if we don't keep those allele and it's lost from our variety of rice that we cultivated by selective breeding, then probably the whole population, which is homogeneous, right? Homozygous, right? They will not survive because they cannot adapt to new environment. They die. So when they die, the whole earth, all the rice plant will be wiped out from earth, and there's no more rice for us to eat. So when there's no rice, what do we eat? Hello, what will you eat when there's no rice? Potato. Yes, when there's no potato, what do you eat? Salmon. Eat meat. Bread. So you eat wheat. Hopefully there's still wheat, okay? So all of us roughly understand the importance of genetic variation of a particular species to maintain the survival of the species on Earth, right? Now, this is the first thing you understand. Maintain survival is not only the main issue. Every species on Earth are interconnected with one another through the food chain and food web. Right? Food chain and food web means what? You got species A, becomes the food for species B, becomes the food for species C, becomes the food for species D. Then after that, this is called food chain. Food web means species A is also the food for another species, let's say species E, for example. Okay, can or not? And then species B also can be the food for species E. And then species E can be the food for another species F, for example. So this is called the food web already. So all organisms are interconnected through the food web. So let's say, for example, when the bee, because of unable to adapt to the new environment, died off from Earth. C got problem, right? D got problem, right? F got problem, right? E got problem. So what's left? A. Can you see or not? If human is D, can you see we are actually affected one, but we don't see it one. We don't see that we actually depend on other organisms to survive one, We don't see that we need the plant to produce oxygen for us. Do you see that? We don't see that, right? Okay, we don't see that the bacteria and fungi are very important to break down the dead organic matter and recycle them so that the plant can take it and make new protein, new carbohydrate, new lipids, continue to supply those materials into the food chain. We cannot see that. So we don't see its importance for us to conserve every species that we can find on Earth for the survival of every species. We didn't see the connection. Now you see the connection, right? How is it important for us to ensure all species survive, and we must maintain the genetic variation to maintain their survival so that the food chain will continue and all the species can survive. So therefore, with that, we come into this topic called conservation. Right? So we need to conserve the biota and the abiota, because abiota affect biota. Biota affect biota. They are all interrelated in an ecosystem. You learned already, right? Ecosystem is a unit made of what? Biota and abiota. What do? They interact with one another. So when they interact, what happens? Energy flow and material cycle within this system, and it's self-contained unit. every organism inside there can survive. It's self-contained. So it's so important to conserve an ecosystem. So when you conserve ecosystem, we conserve the abiota and the biota. So therefore, this is the introduction to this topic. So what we want to learn in this topic is, in order for us to conserve, for human, what do we do, or what have we done, or what we are doing to conserve them? There are various levels that we can do to conserve. So outline the roles of zoo, botanic gardens, conserved areas like national park and marine parks, frozen zoos and seed banks in the conservation of endangered species. So these are the methods that humans have used to conserve endangered species. And then also describe methods of assisted reproduction. That means we assist the animal and the plant to reproduce, to produce the next generation if they are unable to reproduce for whatever reason. So we have to assist them in the reproduction to produce the next generation. For use in the conservation of endangered mammals, limited to, so what are the methods? IVF, embryo transfer, and surrogacy. Okay, so we're going to look at conservation, mainly today, conservation. So first thing is, they talk about conserving endangered species on Earth. So what do you mean by endangered species on Earth? Any species whose numbers have become so low that they're unlikely to be maintained by normal rates of reproduction. That means you can see that the population size of this particular species is dropping with the time. That if you don't do anything to it to intervene, their numbers will continue to drop because the total number of organisms that die is more than the organisms that are being reproduced. So with time, the number will drop until finally there's no more on Earth already. So they are in danger of becoming extinct, totally disappear from Earth already. So this is called endangered species. So endangered species is actually determined by IUCN. So they look at certain data about this species and then they classify them under this category, endangered species. So you must protect them. So what are the organisms of plant, animals, and any other organism that are already listed in the endangered species list? You can go to this IUCN red list. IUCN stands for International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, IUCN. You can click this link to check out what are the organisms that are classified as endangered species. So over here, just want to show you how they classify the organism. So let's say, for example, on the left side, this is all the organisms you can find on Earth. And of course, not all of them are being evaluated. Some of them we don't even know that they exist and we don't evaluate them. So among those organisms that we have evaluated, if we have adequate data, then we can actually classify them into these categories. And then if you don't have adequate data, so data deficient, we cannot classify them. So endangered species is in one of the category. You don't have to memorize them. This is just to show you. Okay, it's got the extinct means totally gone. Extinct in the wild means maybe you find them in the zoo only. Right? In the wild don't have anymore. And you've got the rest of them. So this is example. Okay, the degree of seriousness of them in decreasing in number until finally extinct. So endangered is right in the middle. So we can still do something to rescue them. Okay. So the IUCN red list of 5 criteria for endangered species. That means, how do we classify them into this endangered species category? IUCN use these 5 criteria. Any of these 5. You can see that population size. Population size have decreased at least 50% in the last 10 years. Let's say, for example, you got 100 individuals of this species. Now, 10 years later, only 50 left. So at 10 years later, when 50 left, it will be listed under endangered species list already. Okay? Or geographical range that you can find them becomes smaller and smaller. So, for example, the extent of occurrence means you can see them only within less than 5,000 kilometers square, or the area that they occupy and live in is less than 500 kilometers square already. So the area that they occupy and you can see them becoming smaller and smaller. And then the mature individuals are very important because they are the one that they can reproduce, isn't it? Produce the new young. So when their numbers have been decreasing more and more, then you got less mature individuals that can produce the next generation. So therefore, the population size will drop. right? And then their number continue to decline. So this is also same thing, less than 250 mature individuals. Lastly, when they calculate from the data, they find that the probability of this species becoming extinct in the wild is at least 20% in 20 years. Okay, so within 20 years, there's a chance of 20% of them becoming extinct. So these are examples of endangered species. You see, not all of them classified under endangered species because of they have already entered those categories, right? Including the tigers in Malaysia, correct or not? And the orangutan also, isn't it? Okay. So let's study this African elephant. African elephant is also classified as the endangered species. What do they do in the natural habitat? You can read this on your own. This one no need to memorize. This is the general knowledge. You can read on your own. Okay, you read on your own all these things about what is African elephant, what do they do, whatever. What I'm concerned about is you look at this data. In 1989, the African elephant was added into endangered lists. Why? You look at the data. 1979, I got 1.3 million. 1989, 600,000 only. Isn't that dropped by more than 50%? So because it's dropped by more than 50%, that's why in 1989, African elephant has been classified into the endangered list. So based on that criteria. So why the numbers drop so fast? In 10 years, the numbers dropped by half. Can you imagine in 10 years, the population size of human dropped by half? It's very scary, right? That means half of the students in this class will be gone. Imagine, that's very scary, right? Okay, so why? Let's look at the reason for your interest only. Habitat loss. Human and elephant live in close proximity. Hunting, poaching. What is poaching? Illegal hunting. So what do you mean by habitat loss? You look at this picture, you know. This looks very familiar in our country, isn't it? Can you see this part? The land is totally covered by the forest, but this is totally bare. Very common, right? So this is called deforestation. Removing the forest to acquire the piece of land for what purpose? Build the road. Mainly, I think in our country is to build the a residential estate, right? Build all the high-rise buildings, sell them, make lots of money, right? Build a huge shopping mall. Like what? KL Pavilion, not enough. You want another one? Another one is called what? Bukit Jalil Pavilion. After that, another JB Pavilion. Right? So that's the problem. Remove the entire forest, which can house so many species, and then make it and house only the human. Remove people's homeland and house only the human. Is it right? And then make money out of it some more. My goodness. Okay. So that's one thing. All right. So you deforestation because you want timber, you want a piece of land to grow the crops, to grow grazing livestock, or to convert it into residential estate, to build shopping malls, to build Lego land, to build Disneyland, to build whatever land, okay, and earn money out of that piece of land. And I say goodbye to all the trees, all the plants, all the whatever insects, animals, bye. Money more important. Okay, this is the nature of human mind. You see fast money, but you don't see the long-term effect. The long-term effect. Only wise people will be able to see that. Wise people, you know wise? Whatever thing they do and they think is for the benefit of themselves and everybody around them. So they bring light to the society. They will bring light to the society. Okay. So I hope that you will bring light to the whole society. It depends on you. You take over the whole society, right, in future. So I hope that you bring light to the society. So next thing is, because we go and clear the forest and build our house there and plant our crops there. So when the elephant that is originally staying there, they tend to come back here, right? Because they used to stay there. So when they come back here and they step on our crops, we say that they are pets, so we kill them. Next thing, worse still, hunting. Why they go and hunt the elephant? You see what happened to them? They hunt the elephant just for the two tusks, you know. And to make it fast, they just chop off the whole skin and remove the tusk and leave the elephant suffer until they die. Suffer from pain. Then because of pain, cannot go and look for food. And then subjected to predators. And exposed to the air, exposed to bacteria. So this is what we do to elephant because we want the ivory. For what? For decoration. Need meh? You need those decoration to survive meh? And build the paint on those elephants. Need or not? Trophies. Better still, kill them, chop off their head, hang in your house and say that, you know, I win this thing. I'm the great warrior. Funny. Need or not? Okay. Right? Or, okay, bush meat. You kill them because you want to eat the meat. Because why? You just want to tell people, you know, I've tried elephant meat before. Need meh? Fish not enough. Chicken not enough. Lamb not enough. Beef not enough. Is it? You see, you know, what happened to human when they are not wise enough to make the decision. They let the ego take over their mind, or they follow the ego. That's the problem. You need wisdom to guide yourself. Okay, you see what happened? How many elephants had to be killed to get those tasks? For what? Money? Worth it or not? This money that the person earned is worth it or not? On the expense of all the elephants, the precious life. Every living thing, whether it's human or not human, the life is precious for them, right? Why do you want to kill them just because you want ivory? Can't you just make a plastic and then do some decoration from there? Can, isn't it? Our technology is so advanced, you don't have to go and kill elephant for that, right? But no, people say, you know, this is from real elephant tusks, and this one is the how many $1,000 million? Just to show off, is it? Need or not? Take the money, go and feed the poor lah. Correct or not? Yeah. So wisdom is important, huh? So should we protect them or not? Class? Yes. If you should, then I'll proceed. If should not, then lessons end now. Okay, so let us proceed. So we have already seen the importance of, just now I forgot to say what is poaching. Poaching means illegal hunting. Let's say, for example, in our country, we cannot hunt tiger. We cannot hunt orangutan. So when you go and hunt them, it's called poaching. It's illegal. Okay, but people will do that because why? You can sell at a very high price. Then when somebody who buy them, they say, you know not, even though tiger is illegal for hunting, I'm going to offer you tiger meat. Like very glamorous, I don't know. Cuckoo, yeah. So that's why very important to check your mind. Are you following the light or following the dark force? You have to check. Because when you follow the dark force, right, we will bring a lot of unnecessary suffering to a lot of beings. Unnecessary, right? Can you imagine I like his hair? So I'll just catch him and pull out his hair and leave it there. Yeah, then I put there. You know, this is Samuel's hair. Yeah. Crazy, right? Crazy, right? So next time when you become very rich and famous, please remember, whatever you do will influence a lot of people. Do you want to bring light to others or you bring darkness to them? Then you have to start to check now. Every time, check your mind. Are you following the light force or the dark force? Very important. Then you train your mind to follow the light force. Whatever you do, right, becomes beneficial for the mankind. And not only that, all the living things. You bring light to people. Right? Yes. Lamborghini. Okay, so let's look at how the methods of human who actually realize the importance of conservation of the biota and abiota. What do they do to protect the endangered species? Because they realize that those species are very important for the survival of all the species on Earth, because we are all interconnected by the food chain and food web. So from a smaller scale is the zoo and botanic garden, to the larger scale, which is conserved area, the national park and marine parks. And on top of that, we can also conserve the animals in a frozen zoo and the plant in seed banks. Okay, so let us look at this one. Zoos. This one is long time ago when I always every year bring students for all the activities on. So this is one of the activities we visited the zoo and then we help to clean up the zoo. Yeah. I think I remember I went there twice for different classes. Okay, so zoo. Nowadays, got a lot of deforestation, right? And then there could be some animals that lost their habitat and then they don't know where to go. So we may go and catch them and then send them to the zoo. And then when they send them to the zoo will try to actually maintain their life. So this is called captive breeding. So we capture some animals from the wild and then we place them in captivity so that they are protected, especially endangered species. They will be protected. So we make sure that they're well fed, they're protected from predators and disease, and also all the potential problems in the natural habitat, especially when there's deforestation, right? So we protect them, so we maintain their life. And not only that, we try to increase their number by reproduction. So it is called captive breeding. Breeding means an increase in the number. Now, a successful zoo is not only when they do a captive breeding. A successful zoo is when they are able to release the captive bred individuals. That means once you maintain the number and you increase the number, hopefully you can return back to their natural habitat, right? In order to increase the numbers in the wild so they don't become extinct. And also, in very large zoos, you can do research on those organisms, like what is their breeding behavior, their breeding habits, what are the habitat requirements, what are the ways to increase genetic diversity. So you can do all these sorts of studies about that animal in the zoo. Okay, for example, the Zoological Society of London in London Zoo. Okay, so this is a conservation success story. So this golden lion tamarin has been captive bred and then released back to the wild in Brazil forest. Okay, in a protected reserve forest. So this is a second success story. This is the oryx, saved from extinction, so almost extinct already, bred in captivity, now protected in the reserves in Senegal, Tunisia, and Morocco in Africa. Looks quite healthy, they all, see not? Looks quite healthy, right? Also quite well fed also, isn't it? Okay, on their own. They know how to find for their food. Nice. So, what is the problem when we perform captive breeding? The problem is, you know, in the wild, the animals can roam around anywhere, right? They got huge space, right? But in the zoo, it depends on what kind of zoo. Sometimes they're being trapped within one small little room, facing all the 4 walls or 3 walls, and one of them you got all the bars, and then you got all the humans every day, right? And okay, I'll feed them. So for them, it's very stressful. It's very stressful because they cannot roam around like normal anymore, right? So they're no longer living in the natural habitat. Maybe the temperature is different, the vegetation is different. So the conditions experienced in captivity can cause stress to them. So whenever there's stress, right, the behavior will change already. Like human, when you're stressed, right, you're no longer want to talk to people. You always stay with yourself. After that, you sleep more, you come out less, you talk less. So you wake up to eat, after that you go back to sleep. You don't do anything. And then you got like no energy. Even though you sleep enough, eat enough. So they don't want to do anything. So that means to say that they also don't want to reproduce, isn't it? Right? Behavioral changes. So this will disrupt reproductive cycle for female. Female, right? Very easily, we can know whether we are stressed because the reproductive cycle will change. Correct or not? Will change, okay? Last time when I go to uni in the first year, for the whole first year, I got no period one. No. You know, the change of environment can cause stress that I don't feel that stress, but it's like, one whole year, no period. Nice. Correct? After that, come back to Malaysia, come back already, you know. Oh, like that also can, So for female, the stress can disrupt reproductive cycle. So there's no egg release, means no reproduction, right? Okay. And then they often have little choice of mate. Yeah, in zoo, how many mates can you have, right? Maybe you only have one. Whether you like it or not, you don't like it, they say no reproduction. Correct? And then also inbreeding depression. That means to say that, yes, even if they mate, right, and produce the next generation of sister brothers are going to mate together, which is called inbreeding, isn't it? After that, cousins, and then we're going to breed together, also inbreeding. So subsequently in a zoo, right, you see that subsequent generation becomes less vigorous and less fertile already, less strong, less fertile because of what? Inbreeding depression. So that's possible. So how to resolve inbreeding depression? By now we know we have to do outbreeding enhancement, right? So try to breed this animal with an animal from another zoo. So you may be collecting semen from animal from another zoo, or collecting the ovum also can, right? So you have to do outbreeding. And then sometimes they're stressed, they don't want to interbreed. What do? Do assisted reproduction. What is assisted reproduction? After you see, yeah? Okay, after I'll show you. So what is the advantage of captive breeding? So when you do captive breeding, we can monitor the health of the mother and the development of fetus to ensure that the next generation can be produced. We can use ART, which is assisted reproductive technology, to produce the next generation. For example, they are stressed, they don't want to reproduce. Then we do the ART, whereby we collect the egg from the mother, we collect the sperm from the father, and then we do IVF, in vitro fertilization. In vitro means outside the body in a glass tube. Okay, in vitro means glass. Outside the body in a glass, we allow the egg and the sperm to fuse. Fertilization occurs. After that, embryo is formed. We take the embryo, introduce it back to the mother, or to surrogate mother. Surrogate mother is a mother that carries the embryo, which the egg doesn't belong to this mother. Okay, surrogate mother. So we can use culling and contraceptive methods to prevent inbreeding. So let's say, for example, after many generations, there are a lot of inbreeding, we find that the offsprings are all getting less vigorous and less fertile. What they will do is that they may do contraception to prevent the breeding to happen anymore. Okay? So that they don't continue to pass on the deleterious recessive allele to the next generation. Or they can also perform culling. Culling means what? Culling means actually killing. Culling is actually killing. Killing of all the organisms that are not beneficial. In our human definition, is not beneficial because they're less vigorous and less fertile. So they will do culling. Okay? And also international cooperation to share the gametes, to share the embryos for cross-breeding or outbreeding. And then they can keep a lot of record about the breeding records to know the genetic relatedness of captive individuals. Okay, whether they're closely related or whether they're not closely related. So what is the chances of having inbreeding depression, they will know. Okay, so all the data this advantage of captive breeding. But there's a disadvantage. Disadvantage is when we want to release the captive bred individual to the natural environment, you very happily say, wow, I increase in number already, I bring them back. But you bring them back, suddenly you look at the piece of land, it's transformed into a shopping mall called Bukit Jalil Pavilion. You cannot release them into pavilion, right? I go. Then you got no place to release them. Then how? And then, okay, you said, never mind, no pavilion, never mind, there's this thing called what? Taman Negara. Then you ting tong, fetch them all the way, or fly them all the way to Taman Negara. Then after that, you release them. They don't know how to find food, because since birth, they're being fed. They have not learned how to find their food. Okay, so they die also, you release them. Then they do not know there's this thing called danger of predator because they're not exposed to predator at all. Then release them to the wild, suddenly got snake, suddenly got tiger, suddenly got this, that, scorpion. They don't know how to protect themselves. Okay, bye-bye. Or you release them to the wild, they don't know how to communicate with other members of the same species. Okay, so they become lone ranger. They come to school alone. They study alone. They go to eat alone. Then they go home, do homework alone. Everything alone. Alone better or group better? Hello? When you learn in a group, right, you learn faster, or not? Correct or not? Because everybody may be focusing on different things. They bring to you, and then you learn together. So always try to work in a group because you will move forward faster than you work alone. Okay, I was telling the other students, some people, they say, never mind, I'm very independent one. I can do everything on your own. So I asked them, make your own iPhone, build your own car, plant your own vegetable, raise your own chicken. You say independent, not true, right? We need other people's expertise to help us to make our life easier. We cannot be independent on our own one. Cannot run. All right. So this is called working in a group. Okay. And then susceptible to disease in the wild. They are not exposed to disease yet after birth because they're so well protected. So once you release them to the wild, they're exposed to this bacteria, this fungus, this thing. After that, they cannot survive because they got no immunity against them, right? Because they're not exposed before. And they may not know how to rear their own young. I think they may know, right? Naturally, animals know how to rear their own young, isn't it? So I'm not sure why they said they do not know how to rear their own young. Okay, usually they know one. It's the natural instinct. So let's look at failure number 1. Fail to release them to the wild because they cannot survive. Panda, right? Panda are very cute and very pampered, right? Because they're very precious. So when you release them to the wild, they cannot survive because of a lot of reasons. Don't know how to find food, don't know how to protect themselves from predator, and so on. So none has successfully been returned to the wild. Next, just now we say that this one is successfully released to the wild. Too bad. After some time, all of them die off. Why? Because they do not have the climbing and foraging skills. In the zoo, they don't have much opportunity to learn how to climb. And then they never hunt for food before, so they don't know how to hunt for food. So eventually, we managed to grow their numbers and release them to the wild, but they cannot survive in the wild. So what is the solution? Solution is, in order to increase the success rate of releasing captive bred individuals, we have to provide conditions in the zoo that are close to natural habitat. So there's some zoos, right? They got a huge piece of land, a lot of nature, a lot of trees and grassland, So those kind of zoo, right, will provide more natural habitat for this organism, and they can actually roam around the area one. Okay, so and then we ensure minimum contact with humans so that slowly they adjust to the natural environment and slowly acclimatize. Acclimatize, this word means make them adjusted to the natural habitat. So put them in a cage, eventually put them in a cage, bring them to the natural habitat, open the gate of the cage, allow them to go out, come in, go out, come in until they feel confident with it. They will go out and don't come back anymore. So slowly allow them to acclimatize. Okay, then the success rate will be higher. All right, so this is using zoo. Now we say that when they are stressed and they don't want to reproduce, we have to do this called ART, assisted reproduction technology. Assisted reproduction technology. There are many ways to do that one. Now, we can, because you've learned this in artificial selection of high milk yield cow, right? So the technique is very similar. We collect semen from the male, and then we can collect the egg from the female. Okay, we can collect the egg from the female, and then we put them together in a petri dish containing nutrients, allowing the sperm and the egg to fertilize. So after it fertilizes, a zygote is formed, and then by mitosis, it forms a ball of cell, which is called the morula. So this embryo stage. So this morula, we can actually split it into smaller morula and then transfer it into a surrogate mother and let it grow. So for example, because panda is very precious, right? So we don't want to stress the mother panda to carry the fetus. So we can introduce the embryo into not a panda bear, but we can introduce into a bear. Cannot. And make the mother bear grow the panda bear. Can, right? Make the horse grow the donkey. Cannot. Can. Okay? So we can do that. Or sometimes they say, okay, I'm not collecting the egg. I do artificial insemination. That means I collect the sperm and I introduce the sperm into the uterus, and hopefully it will meet with the egg and fertilize, and the embryo is inside. So you can maintain the embryo inside there and allow this mother to carry it, or you can flush the embryo out just like this one here. So there are many ways to do that one. Okay. So these are the storage of semen. So after we collect the semen, before you want to use it, you can store it in liquid nitrogen. For example, from one zoo, you collect the semen. Then you want to transfer to another zoo, right, to do the outbreeding. Then you have to store them first. So store them in the liquid nitrogen. Temperature is -196, very low temperature. Okay, and can store for very long. So this is what artificial insemination. We inject the semen into the uterus of the female, and hopefully it will fertilize the egg. So after that, you can maintain the embryo to continue to grow inside here, or you may want to flush out the embryo. So this is a diagram to show that how they do to flush out the embryo. So the water will flow in, down gravitational force. And after the whole tube is being filled with water, there will be overflow. So the overflow will be flowing out down the gravitational force, right? Okay, into the container. So the embryo will be flushed into here. Then you can use the embryo. Okay. So this is a petri dish where you can put the egg and sperm together to promote IVF, in vitro fertilization. Okay. Then after that, you allow incubate them in the optimum temperature. Optimum temperature is usually temperature of the organism that it comes from, like our body temperature. Allow the fertilized egg to grow. So mitosis will occur into a ball of cells. 8-cell stage is just nice for us to work with. Okay. So you see here, first, we inject hormone into the female to cause them to super ovulate. Super ovulate means many eggs will mature at the same time. For female, usually every month, it's only one egg will mature. But you want to collect a lot of eggs at the same time to produce a lot of embryo, right? So therefore, you have to inject excess hormone to cause super ovulation. After that, we use ultrasound scan to guide us to collect all the mature ova, which is the ovum, right? We collect it in already, and then you put together the sperm to allow fertilization. Then after that, when the embryo grow into the 8-cell stage, we take them and we inject them into the uterus of the same mother or surrogate mother. So this is called IVF, okay? And then we can use ultrasound scan to actually monitor the mother throughout the pregnancy to ensure the fetus grow well. So that is what we can do in the zoo, okay? And using the assisted reproduction technology, ART, to increase in the number. Now, sometimes we may say that it's very tedious for us to keep the animal in the zoo because they need to eat, right? You need to feed them. You need to take care of their health. So it's very expensive. So another way, easier way is, why not we keep frozen zoo? Frozen zoo doesn't mean we freeze the animal and then put it into a test tube, right? It's too big. Frozen zoo is as long as we can take a sample from this animal, which contain genetic material of this animal, and then we freeze them and when we want to use it, we can retrieve and use it. That is called frozen zoo. So what do we keep in frozen zoo? We keep sperms, eggs, embryos, tissues, as well as DNA. So these are all the material that can obtain from the animal, and they contain the DNA of the animal. So what's the main purpose here? To maintain the genetic diversity of this animal. That means we go around the whole world, we try to collect either sperm or egg or embryo or tissue of all variety of all type of panda. Okay, we can go around China and collect all sorts of variation of panda, right? So we increase in the genetic variation that we store inside the frozen zoo. So this is to maintain genetic diversity, genetic variation of panda in this form. So why frozen zoo? Advantage, can hold more genetic diversity in a small space, because we are not keeping the animal, we're only keeping the cell or the tissue. Okay, and then because of it being small, we can go around and collect all different variety or different types of the same species, and then we protect the genetic diversity in our frozen zoo. And then we can preserve the genetic material for a long period of time because it's frozen, okay, in a very low temperature, -196. And then we can convert the cells into stem cells and then into eggs and sperms whenever we need it, okay? Whenever we need, for example, one of these days, you say that suddenly there's a natural catastrophe, all the panda die off in China. Never mind, there's a solution. There's this thing called frozen zoo. So you go to the frozen zoo and take the embryo and put the embryo into the bear, surrogate mother. Then you got your panda bear again. Okay? So that's what we can do now. So we can save endangered species from becoming extinct because of that. So it's very important, frozen zoo. So we have got example, frozen zoo at San Diego Zoo Conservation Research. So they have frozen animals and plant materials in a liquid nitrogen at -196 degrees Celsius since 1976. So many years ago, they already know that it's important to conserve. They already started to keep those materials in a frozen zoo. So they've got 8,400 samples from over 800 species and subspecies that are being kept there. Now, one thing is oocyte, right? Oocyte is usually bigger than sperm, right? Oocyte is bigger than sperm, and because it's bigger than sperm, the cytoplasm is bigger. So cytoplasm, a lot is made of cytosol, a lot of liquid inside oocyte. So it's very difficult to freeze and keep them because you know when the temperature drops, right? At a certain temperature, ice crystal will form. Ice crystal is quite sharp. It will poke the membrane. So when we freeze them, after that we thaw them, the membrane, because got ice crystal passing through it, it will lyse and the whole cell will die. So very difficult to actually freeze the oocyte because of that ice crystal forming. So freezing and thawing the oocyte will destroy the oocyte. Okay. Now this is just to show you that a research which tried out A, B, C, 3 different sources of material to freeze the cell. So this is called different freezing protocol. Protocol means methods. They want to find out which method is better to freeze the cell so that when they thaw the cell is still alive. So this just to show that, hey, which one is better? You can see that material A or protocol A is better because after freezing for 60 seconds, 672 number of colony can be formed. That means the survival rate is higher, right? For protocol A in freezing the cell. So you can see that all over the world, there are a lot of research being done, and it's very specific to one thing only, right? And this thing, the moment you discover it, you actually improve the technique. You improve the chances of success in freezing them, and therefore maintaining the genetic variation for us when we need it is there. So that's why research is very helpful, especially in medical field, right? They keep on improving the way they do the surgery so that the person can recover faster, isn't it? Not less invasive, recover faster, more effective, less pain, right? So research is very important in the sense that improve the technique for the benefit of mankind. And hopefully we are entrusted with this power, so we will go towards the bright side and help all the living things. Okay, so grow the bright side, dark side don't grow. Okay, right. In the same way, so just now is conserving animal. This one is conserving plant. It's very similar. One is zoo, one is botanic garden. So the way of conservation is similar. So I want you to read this part on your own. Can or not? Conservation of plant, read on your own. Okay. So here it shows that this plant called Sargent's cherry palm, they have been conserved in the Miami, and then they increase in the number, means they propagate, they grow the plant. After that, they start to reintroduce them back into the Florida Keys. Florida Keys are all these small islands around here. So this is a success story of botanic gardens in conservation and reintroduction of the plant to the natural habitat. Okay, so this is a botanic garden. First way of conserving plant. Second way, like zoo, frozen zoo, which help us to reduce the space that we need to conserve the genetic material for animal. In plant, we can use seed bank to conserve the genetic material of the plant instead of growing the whole plant, isn't it? If you grow the plant, you need very huge space, right, to grow the plant. But here, if you can have seed bank, a small container itself can store so many seeds. And therefore, in a small container, you can house so many genetic variation of that particular species. So this is more cost effective than growing the plant. Okay, so what is a seed bank? Seed bank is a storage facility that stores what? Stores seed. And what do you want to store? Actually, you want to store all the different kind of genes and alleles of this particular species to store the genetic variation and genetic diversity of this species. So the seed stock may be from the food crops, because food crops are very important, right? If one of these days the rice are gone, right? Then we can come back to here to look for the seed where they have got alleles for them to survive in the new environment. So we have to do that. Or we store endangered plant species because we do not know their function, but we know that numbers are decreasing. We want to maintain them on Earth. So we do that. Okay. So why keeping seeds in the seed bank? Because the seeds can live for a very long time, at least 15 years. Sometimes a few hundred years, a few thousand years, a seed, you can still survive, can still grow into a new plant, isn't it? So they can live for very long. And we can store large numbers in a very small space, so it's very space saving, okay, cost effective. And we can go around the whole world to collect the seeds that contain all the genetic material of that particular species. Like for example, rice. You want to maintain genetic variation of rice, what do? You go to the whole world where you can find rice being cultivated. You go there, you physically, visually examine the rice, see that this rice is different from that kind of rice plant, right? In terms of the everything. Then you collect the seeds from this rice, and you go to another place, collect seeds from another rice plant. Then you make sure you collect all the different kinds and you put together in a seed bank. So you have got all the collection of all the genetic, all the gene pool, all the variation in the genes and alleles of this particular species on Earth. Okay? So therefore, we will maintain the gene pool and maintain the genetic diversity of this species in our seed bank. And then anytime when this plant is wiped out, suddenly, don't know because of what, we can come back to the seed bank, retrieve the seed and grow them back. Okay? So how to do the seed bank is we have to go and collect the seed. So we go to the field, wherever we can find the rice in the world, and we randomly sample it in the field to ensure that we have a collection of a range of genetic diversity. So how do we ensure you can collect genetic diversity? We have to visually identify the phenotype of this rice. Or this is tall and this one is tall and a bit thin. That one is short and fat. This grain is bigger. This grain is longer. So all the different types. Okay, this grain is yellow color. This grain is white color. So all different types we collect. Okay. And then we take samples from various environmental conditions, various topography, various altitude, various climate, various soils to ensure all the genetic variation are collected. We can do a DNA analysis to look for alleles that are not expressed in phenotype. So we can do that to ensure all the different variations that we collected and make sure we collect a large number of the seeds and large number and large diverse sample of the seeds of each species. When you bring the seeds back to the lab, check that the seeds are viable, means they are still alive. There's no disease, no pests on it. Then store it. That means you have to dry the seed until 5% water left, and then you store it. Because when there's water, it will encourage bacteria to grow, right? Because there's water. So we have to dry it until 5%. So the seed remains dormant, no activity. Practically no activity. Okay? Then after 5 years, we have to go and check whether the seeds that we store are viable or not. They may still survive. So this is called germination test. After 5 years, when you do a germination test, you find that less than 85% of seeds can germinate. Then we have to increase the number of seeds by growing whatever 25% left, grow them into plant, cross the plant, and collect the new seeds, and you store again. So this is what the seed banks have to do. So these are 3 examples of the seed bank in the world. This Millennium Seed Bank is in UK, okay, and this is Svaberg Global Seed Board in Norway. Now this is Norway here. It's very near to the North Pole. North Pole is always covered by ice the whole year round, right? So it's very interesting. You see what they do. They go to an island. They build a tunnel deep into the mountain, and then they store it into this storage space inside here. It's like outsider cannot easily access one. So who will store the seed here? All the seed bank in the world, when they have got extra seeds, they will store the extra seeds over here just in case the seeds in the seed bank die off. They can still come back here and retrieve it. And then they store it for free, So this is an effort that's being done internationally to conserve the genetic diversity of the plant species. Okay. Now this is a seed bank in, no, this is actually rice research institution, where they keep the rice, all the variety of rice that you can find on earth here. So you've got 100,000 to 200,000 collection of rice varieties here. All right. Okay. Hang on. So for the seed bank, it's not all the seeds of all the plants can be stored in the seed bank, because there are two main types of seeds for the plant. A, orthodox seed, and B, recalcitrant seed. Orthodox seeds are the seeds that you can store them because you can dry them until 5% water left. Okay, but recalcitrant seeds, you cannot store them. For example, coconut. Coconut got a lot of water inside, right? So therefore, you cannot dry away the water until 5% left, and then you store them in seed bank. So this kind of seeds, right, we cannot store them. So for this kind of plants that produce recalcitrant seeds, usually tropical plant, like cocoa, coconut, palm, rubber, coffee, oak, chestnut, they are all recalcitrant seeds. They produce recalcitrant seeds. So we cannot store them in seed bank, but if you want to maintain their genetic variety, you want to maintain and keep the genetic diversity, we have to keep them as a whole plant. Okay, we have to keep them as a whole plant, like this one here. So in this place is where they plant the cocoa. They plant all sorts of cocoa they can find on earth, and they plant it here. So this is no longer called the seed bank, we call it gene bank. It's a piece of land where you cultivate all the different variety of cocoa to maintain the genetic diversity and keep them here as a whole plant. Okay. Now this is a problem of seed banks. So you can read this. What is the problem of seed bank here? Okay. What about problem of gene banks? Because we are planting the plant, you need a huge space of land to grow the plants. And then because the plant is grown in the land, it's exposed to disease. So it's very hard to keep them free from disease, because bacteria, fungus can spread from anywhere. Insects, pests can spread from anywhere and come in here. And the gene banks may be susceptible to natural catastrophe. So it's subjected to hurricane, subjected to flooding, subjected to forest fire, which may destroy our gene bank. Okay, so this problem of gene bank. So try this question. The answer, you can check it from the answer for the textbook. Okay. Now, national parks. So the last way of conservation and the best way is you have national park, which is actually a protected natural area. So protected area is a piece of land or a sea that's specially dedicated to protection, to maintain the biological diversity in that area, and natural resources. Natural resources, whatever biota and abiota you can find there, we want to maintain them. And associated cultural resources, that means cultural resources means, for example, you got the native that lives there, right? The lifestyle of the native, the handicrafts of the natives. What do they do? So this is called cultural resources. So we want to maintain all these things managed through legal or other effective means. So we have to legally manage that area. For example, in Malaysia, you want to go to Sipadan, you have to register. They will ensure that every day maximum how many number of visitors, so that you will not too many, and we will destroy that environment. Okay, same as Taman Negara. You have to register when you go there, so they'll control the number of visitors. So these are all the national parks that you can find in Malaysia actually, and they're very cute. Okay, in Malaysia. So I highly encourage you all to go and visit those areas, because they're really beautiful. They are really, really beautiful. So go and visit them. Okay. So these are all the national parks that we have here. So ways in which national parks protect their resident species. How do we protect them? We got wardens and rangers that will patrol that park so that to prevent illegal activities. So you don't allow people to simply pluck things and bring home, or to catch the animals. Access by humans can be restricted. For example, when you go to Mulu Cave. Mulu Cave, when you go there, right, when you want to walk from the place when you stay the hotel to the cave, you cannot walk into the forest one, because they'll build the wooden plank, which is raised up very high, a few floors high from the land. You walk in those planks, so you cannot go to the ground and start to disturb the environment. So this is called access by human can be restricted by that. So we don't destroy the environment. Okay. Agriculture activities can be strictly controlled. Let's say, for example, you've got natives staying there. So they have to cultivate their own crops. So you allow that to happen, but don't destroy the environment. So this controlled activities. Industrial activity, let's say you've got mining inside there. You discover something very precious. Yes, allowed, but controlled. Okay, not destructive. Building of roads, dwellings, and other development can be strictly controlled. So probably we only allow building of roads just enough to access to the area, building of the housing area, dwellings for visitors outside the park or at the edge of the park only, not inside. Okay. And then usually visitor centers will be built. So when you go and visit that area, you can go to visitor center to learn what are the biota that you can find around that area. What are the conservative efforts that have been done? Okay. So wildlife can be protected directly with 24 hours surveillance of the nests, of the breeding sites. Okay. So this one is interesting because I brought the student in 2008. I brought them to this Ma Daerah Longhouse. They were doing gotong royong, so we helped with painting of the building for visitors to stay. This is the East Coast where they conserve the turtles. So turtles will come here during breeding seasons to lay their eggs, and then they will take their eggs and then make sure that it hatches, and then after that the turtles will go back to the sea. So this is an area that's being used to conserve the turtles. So students have opportunity to go there to contribute to the conservation of that area. And then what happens is that, the SAM students went there to actually paint a mural in the entrance of that Ma Daerah Turtle Sanctuary. And you can see our Taylor's logo is actually there. So this is what our students have done in an effort of conservation, okay, promoting conservation. So you can also contribute. Okay, so what you have learned today, outline the roles of zoos, botanic gardens, conserved areas, which can be national and marine parks, frozen zoos and seed banks in the conservation of endangered species. Describe methods of assisted reproduction used in the conservation of endangered mammals, limited to IVF, embryo transfer, and surrogacy. So that's all for today's lesson. Yay.